Hello everyone, my name's Mike. I thought today I would make a fairly quick video of how to properly perform a leak down or a pressure test on a 2-cycle motor. I'm doing this mainly because I see a lot of questions about tuning or tuning issues, or my friend has just bought a new bike and it's having this issue, or I have been struggling with jetting in general, and I don't see a lot of people performing this as a form of diagnosis, and especially with, in my case, a four-wheeler that's 20 plus years old, and if you're buying used stuff, you never really know what you're going to get. So we'll go over a little bit of why it's important, and also just some of the inexpensive tools you will need and the process. So we'll get started here. A little background on myself. I actually have been writing and working on 2-cycle motors for about 22 years now. Yeah, I'm kind of old ish. I also hold a degree in automotive service, currently work in automotive research and development, and I've pretty much been tinkering with motors my whole life. So I figured I'd share a little knowledge with you guys. I am by no means an expert. So if I mistakenly say something or misspeak, feel free to correct me, because I know everybody on the internet loves that. So here we'll start off with some of the first items you are going to need. Over here we have just regular PVC pipe that you can buy at Home Depot. This one is actually 1 inch schedule 40. I don't know if you guys can see that. 1 inch schedule 40. So I have one elbow, a short piece of straight, a cap, and a pressure gauge, which also was purchased from Home Depot in the plumbing department. The valve stem, I'm not quite sure where I got it. It was either the Auto Parts store or Home Depot. So basically you'll have to make that's a 1/4 inch NPT tap, thread her in there, make sure it doesn't leak, and then seal up all the joints. The adapter on the end is actually the adapter that comes with a Boysen rad valve, and it fits right in there with the stock adapter. Also, you will need, let me go down here, this is an expandable rubber plug picked up from the Auto Parts store. Altogether, you might have 20 bucks into all this, if that. So the first thing I want to talk about, besides the tools, is also the preparation of the motor before you insert all your tools here. So the purpose of the leak down test is to actually test the motor's ability to seal everything. Basically, all your gaskets, all your rubber seals, etc. An engine is nothing more than a big air pump, and it will draw in air from anywhere it can. If you have an air leak anywhere, it will cause all kinds of tuning headaches, and it's not fun. So basically, what you need to do is you need to remove anything on the motor that will allow you to see all the seals, because you are also going to need to spray down any areas that if you get an air leak, you're going to need to start spraying things down. So the first thing you want to do is, this is the crank, the stator side. So I have actually removed the cover and then the stator itself. You will also need to remove the carburetor from the rad valve, because that's where we are going to hook up our pressure pipe, I'm going to call it. And then our plug will go into the exhaust flange here. Additionally, on the opposite side of the bike, you're going to want to remove this side cover as well, so that way you have access to the crank seal on this bike is underneath here. And also, this bike has a counterbalancer. Not all bikes have this. Dirt bikes do not normally have that. So on this bike, if you want to go one extra step, which I'm not going to because I know it is sealed. I've already performed this. Remove the counterbalancer, because the way this case is made, there is actually a wall inside here that separates the crankcase from the counterbalancer hole. Now, if you have a leak inside the crankcase, it can actually leak into the counterbalancer hole, and it's actually really hard to find, and I've had that happen myself. Also, because you have various diverters inside the case that separate the transmission from the crankcase and also from the counterbalancer, you should drain all the oil and remove your drain plug. Some people forget to do this, but you can actually have an internal leak that will bleed through into your transmission, and it's really hard to find, and the only way you can really do it is to take out the drain plug there and listen, or if you're real lucky you can feel it, but it's really low pressure. And that's about all you need to do to prep the motor. So you're going to drain the coolant, drain your transmission fluid, remove both side case covers, you're going to take your pipe off, and you're going to take off your carburetor. So after the motor is all prepped and ready, we are then going to very simply install. I'm going to have to put the phone down, guys. Alright, we'll see where we can put this. How about that? Alright, slide this guy on here. Just going to simply tighten down the clamp. It doesn't need to be tightened on with a wrench. I think people overdo these things sometimes, and you end up actually causing damage to the rubber adapter. So I purposely made this with an elbow so I could do this on the bike. It doesn't have to have an elbow, you can make it straight, but you're gonna obviously not be able to use this in a bike. Second thing will be to put in our rubber expandable plug into the exhaust manifold, flange, whatever you want to call it. We're going to tighten it down until she stops moving. It's already stopped moving. And these things, depending on how stiff they are, you give that a pretty good wrench and you should be good to go. It's not going to come out. So basically that's all you have to do, is hook those two things up after everything's disassembled. Additionally, one item I did not say is on your valve stem, you want to make sure, let me see if I can get it to focus, you want a valve cap that has a seal on it. So that way, if for any reason that your valve stem center starts to leak, the cap actually traps it. These are actually prone to leaking on vehicles, pretty much anything, because they're just a little spring-loaded deal, and all it takes is a little bit of dirt and they stick just a little bit. So the other thing you will need, do not pump this up with an air compressor. You can see that this gauge only goes up to 10. There's a reason for that. You do not need more than 10. I only use about 7 to 8 PSI. So for that, I actually use handy dandy bicycle pump here, and we'll pump it up to about 7 to 8 PSI, and then I'm going to wait approximately 30 minutes, and as long as we are under 1/2 PSI of loss, the motor is sealed. It's never going to be perfect. Some motors are a little bit better at sealing than others, but this bike, I bought this bike used at the end of last year sometime, so I had the top end just redone. I changed to a different head. I also put on a new exhaust flange there, and I want to make sure that I'm not wasting my money when I go and put a new top end only to have a crank seal or something else leak and burn down the motor. So let me pump this up for a minute and you guys can watch a little bit. So, I don't like dealing with numbers that little short, so I'm actually going to depress the valve here to make it go down to 7, just so we start with an even number. It's easier for me to remember. When you get old, like me, the memory goes sometimes. Close enough. So we're just over 7. Put our little valve cap back on. So that's sealed. Now, if you see this going down immediately, you have an air leak. You then have to find it. How do we find it? This is nothing more than dish soap and water. You will go around and start spraying any seals you can see visible. Spray it could be your acorn nuts, it could be the head gasket, base gaskets, it could be the reed valve gaskets. On this one you can actually see I have sealant because this one, when I was messing with it, this aluminum flange was used and it's obviously warped because it would not seal, and I know the cylinder is flat on the flange, but this sealant here is actually 3-bond 1211, which is not technically made for exhaust heat. We're going to try it anyways. 3-bond does make a different formulation, which is, I believe, 1207B, which is actually made for exhaust manifolds. So this is the one part where I say don't do what I do something else. Anyways, we'll come back in a half an hour and we will see what she reads. All right, I'm back. It's been about a half an hour and let's see what we got. I'll turn you around here. So literally you can see that within a half an hour it has lost basically nothing, so she's good and sealed. A couple items that I missed. When you set up the motor, you want to make sure that the piston is at the bottom of the stroke, so that way when you're blowing air through the reed cage it actually can go up and over the piston. And then also on this motor, on the crank side, I'll show you over here, we have the main gear here. Where are we at there? Oops. The main gear right here has to be on in order for the seal on that side of the motor to seal, and I'll show you why on my other motor here. On these motors, the crank on this side is splined, and the way they have it is they have this spacer that slides over the crank like so. The issue is that you still have splines that can allow air out. The gear, once it slides on there and you put the washer on the outside of the gear, will then seal the motor, or at least that side of the motor. Other than that, I hope you learned something and maybe it'll teach you. This is a very easy test to do, and it helps eliminate one issue or possible issues with the motor itself being able to draw air from places it's not supposed to be to. You're supposed to be drawing air. And the other thing is, people are going to ask, can I just do a compression test? A compression test and a leak down test or a pressure test are two different tests for two different items. The compression test will test the sealing ability of the head per se, but a compression test is nothing more than a test to ensure that your rings are properly sealing and the motor can build pressure. A pressure test will actually test all your seals and gaskets to be sure that it does not have an air leak. That's about it.